Scam artists, con men and tricksters, they trouser an estimated £6 billion every year from you and me, the British public. They don't care who they target or how much damage they cause. All they want to do is get their mitts on as much of your cash as they can.
Coming up, how one couple's dream of a holiday home in the sun was cruelly snatched away.
I was crying, I was upset, you know, honestly, you couldn't function.
And a ruthless employment scam that targeted innocent job hunters.
I don't believe in myself anymore. I think you've been taken to the cleaners once, Ken. This could happen again.
Well, I'm here to tell you what the con man doesn't want you to know. How to stay one step ahead of the game and not get scammed. Wouldn't it be great to own a holiday home in another country? Unfortunately, to get one, you may have to overcome a language barrier and a completely different way of buying and selling property. That's why you need someone you can trust. And there are plenty of people out there who are willing to abuse that trust.
With European property prices falling, particularly in Spain, it would be easy to be tempted into buying abroad. But beware. Increasing numbers of British buyers are falling prey to overseas property scams.
Financially, this type of scam can wipe people out. It can take all their life savings, and if they're later on in life a pensioner, they can't earn that money back again. So financially, this can be devastating.
I'm about to meet a woman who's come across a holiday home con man and paid a very heavy price.
Elizabeth King is a nurse from Dunblane in Scotland. She and her husband Ian, a doctor, were unfortunate enough to be targeted by a con man on the beautiful Isle of Lanzarote. Liz has agreed to share their story, which began with a dream of owning a property in their favourite holiday destination.
When's the point then when you think, I'm not happy just going and staying in apartments or hotels, I want my own place?
You know, you're nearing retirement and you've got children that are growing up and grandchildren, and you think, you know, should we think about an apartment abroad, a place of our own?
So, on one of their frequent trips to the island, the couple started scouting around for properties. And it wasn't long before something caught their eye.
We saw this nice green grass sort of area in this complex, and green grass in Lanzarote is rare. So we went and had a look. It was a holiday complex and it looked lovely.
The complex consisted of holiday apartments for rent and residential apartments which were in the process of being renovated. The residential apartments were being advertised for sale in the window of a local estate agent run by an Irishman called Paul Kavanagh and his family.
In this particular scam, setting up a shop front, immediately you think that that is a credible business and therefore he's a credible businessman and not a scam artist.
From his shop front, agent Paul Kavanagh was offering an apartment in a prime location for €125,000.
Paul had suggested the one at the top of the complex. It had a huge big balcony, it got the sun all day, and he took us up to see that, and we fell in love with that one.
But as is so often the case with scams, the pressure was now on. The agent told them the apartments were selling fast, so if they wanted to buy one, they'd have to move quickly.
So I would imagine that dinner that evening, you pretty much talked about nothing else.
Yeah, really excited about it, about the prospect to getting our own place in Lanzarote.
Liz and Ian couldn't believe their luck. Not only had they found their dream apartment, they'd also found an agent who seemed to have their interests at heart.
One way that a con man will gain someone's trust is to set up a relationship, you know, actually be friendly with people, try to identify things they share. But they don't want to be your friend, they just want to get their hands on your wallet.
He came across very pleasant, lovely man. He was from Ireland, you know, chatting to us, you know, about his family and his partner.
Did that family setup give you a degree of confidence,
yes.
Do you think?
Do
you think that was maybe a decider in some ways, or
yeah.
convincing?
That's definitely the thing that persuaded us that everything was, you know, above board.
The couple was sold on the flat, and pretty soon they were handing over cash to their friendly estate agent.
The agent had told us we would have to pay €1,000 deposit that day, so we went to the bank and got the €1,000, and that was the apartment secured.
All that stood between the couple and their Lanzarote dream was the daunting prospect of dealing with the paperwork, which of course would be in a foreign language. But Liz and Ian didn't need to worry, because Paul Kavanagh was there to take care of everything.
He could organise mortgages, he would organise the finance. He was the main agent that was dealing with everything.
He even introduced them to his financial advisor, who he said would arrange their mortgage with a Spanish bank. But this helpful approach was all part of the Kavanagh plan.
We specifically asked, would it be better if we secured the mortgage back home, and we were told absolutely not. Things will get processed a lot quicker if we leave it with them and the banks over there.
Kavanagh had cleverly manipulated the situation, so he had control. He told Liz and Ian that the financial advisor had secured them an 80% mortgage, and now all they had to do was pay a deposit of €28,000.
And that's going directly to the financial institution that's setting up your mortgage?
No, it's going to Paul, to the agent's bank account.
OK.
Unbeknown to Ian and Liz, there was no mortgage. The agent had pretended to secure the loan so he could get the couple to pay a deposit, a betrayal of their trust that meant he now had over £20,000 of their hard-earned savings.
Modern societies are based on trust. We couldn't go about our own business without trusting people. So they exploit the fact that in our normal relations with businesses, with neighbours, with friends, with family, we trust each other.
Did you ever question why that money wouldn't be going directly to the mortgage provider?
No, we didn't, no. We just accepted that he would, you know, pay that to the banks.
Liz and Ian believed they were now well on their way to owning their Lanzarote apartment, and they had absolute faith in their agent, Paul Kavanagh. But that faith was about to face its first test. Kavanagh had told them they'd be able to move into the apartment on their next visit. It soon became clear this wasn't the case.
We went over a couple of times to see how the renovations were going, and both times very, very little work had been done on the apartment.
The con man will have an answer to every one of your questions. The answers to those questions are always driven in such a way that you can't ask a further question.
Oh, there's been a problem with the builders. I've had to get people over from Ireland to start work on it.
Sensing the couple's unease, he turned on the charm.
They're actually quite expert psychologists. They use a trick called reciprocity, that if they give you something small, you think that you owe them something back.
He said, you know, if we got our flights, he would sort out accommodation for us, and paid for it. He paid for the accommodation. He done that on 3 separate occasions.
I mean, that's going above and beyond the call of duty, isn't it?
Yep. Which again, you know, gave us a bit more trust in him that he was doing this for us.
Despite the hold-ups, Liz and Ian were reassured by Kavanagh's apparent kindness. But on their next visit to Lanzarote, there was yet more bad news.
We met with the agent and the financial advisor, and they came in with glum faces and told us the bank has come back to us to say they are now not giving you an 80% mortgage. They're only giving you, I think it was 70%, and they need another 20,000.
I mean, at this stage, surely your needles are twitching.
Very much so.
This was crunch time. The scammer had raised the stakes, but by now, Liz and Ian were well and truly on the hook. They phoned their bank manager back in Scotland to see if the bank would lend them the money.
The bank manager, he had alarm bells ringing because he said, are you sure you know what you're doing? And we reassured them that the agent was dealing with it all.
But there's got to be something else going on here that's made you continue, despite someone flagging it up to you right in your face at this point. Something about this doesn't feel right. Wait, what is it?
We trusted him so much. You know, we were out for dinner with him and his partner. He spent a whole day with us, going round, you know, taking us up to the capital, all the furniture shops. You know, we just had pure belief and trust in them, you know, that they would do things right for us.
The bank in Scotland sent the €20,000, and again, it went straight into Kavanagh's account. Liz and Ian now believed they were on the home straight, but there was a surprise in store. Several months later, a letter arrived from the owner of the apartments.
It said that the owners were withdrawing from the contract because we hadn't completed within 6 weeks of signing the contract.
This would mean Liz and Ian would lose the apartment and the €49,000 they'd put down as a deposit. The couple had trusted Paul Kavanagh to handle the sale, and yet now it seemed the wheels were coming off their Lanzarote dream.
Totally furious, totally gutted, very angry.
Liz found and confronted Kavanagh, but even now he seemed to have all the answers.
He told us he had paid for an extension on the contract and he would deal with the owner of the apartments direct.
Liz and Ian didn't want to believe that their friendly agent had done anything wrong.
After everything that's happened, you still trust him? Okay.
Yeah.
But they were about to find out that the man they'd trusted with their life savings had scarpered with the cash.
And one of the other couples that were over there who were in the same situation emailed us to say there is no more Paul Kavanagh, he is away, he's left the island, the estate agents, the unit is completely closed, and that's when reality sunk in that we had lost it, lost everything.
The couple had believed the sale was all going to plan. It turned out the owner did too. But sat in the middle, controlling everything, rogue estate agent Paul Kavanagh had cleverly deceived everyone and strung things along to get hold of as much cash as possible.
It was terrible, honestly. It was, you know, we were crying, well, I was crying, I was upset. You know, you just, honestly, you couldn't function to lose all that money. It was a dream. You know, everything that we planned for a retirement, for a family, you know, it was just everything just like that.
Over the next few months, Liz and Ian received emails from 15 other couples who'd also handed over their money in good faith and had their trust abused in the same way. In total, Paul Kavanagh took almost £400,000 from British couples, and the innocent owner of the apartments was left without buyers. The Spanish courts have issued a warrant for Paul Kavanagh's arrest for fraud, but at this point, no one knows where he is. If you're buying a property abroad, here's what you need to know to avoid the con men.
In the UK, if you're buying a property, you get an independent lawyer. You go and get a solicitor involved. So here I'd suggest that you should get a solicitor in Spain or one in the UK to advise you.
Whether you're buying a property in Spain, France, Greece or Bulgaria, having a reputable independent solicitor who knows the local system can help you avoid any legal pitfalls.
Secondly is to do your research. You go on the internet, see what track record these people have. Could you trust them?
And finally, never hand over any money until you're absolutely sure it's going direct to a mortgage lender or a solicitor. Sadly, this is all too late for Liz and Ian.
I think we just were so trusting of him. You know, he just seemed so nice at the time, you know, and we just had so much belief in him. But we were conned big time.
It would be so harsh to look at what's happened to you and describe you or Ian as gullible in any way, because it's not the case.
No.
You're not stupid.
No.
And you
That's the thing, we're not, you know. It just shows you how anybody that's got any trust and belief in people can, you know, be conned, be taken down that road, and that's the hurtful thing.
For Liz and Ian, it's not just about the money or the betrayal of trust. It's also about seeing their dreams for retirement disappear. According to the latest government statistics, there are just over 2.5 million people unemployed in the UK. Now, the majority of us see this as a bad thing. But to the con man, the unemployed can present the perfect target for a sly and sophisticated scam. And in 2010, Stockton Trading Standards were alerted to just such a con. A company in the northeast was using job centres to advertise jobs that didn't really exist.
The main complaint was there were no job opportunities, there were no business leads that had been promised.
And the investigation would reveal that the man behind the company had used false promises of work to take over £75,000 from innocent job hunters.
There were so many people that had been strung along. They'd handed over the money, they'd done the course, and then gradually they'd been fobbed off and fobbed off.
Trading Standards were first alerted to the case in November 2010, when complaints began to flood in from worried members of the public. Experienced officer John Morley was assigned to the case.
Many of the complainants were of the opinion that the person offering the training was quite plausible and had given the impression that they had employment already lined up.
One of those targeted was John Izzard, an unemployed computer programmer who'd only recently returned to the UK.
I'd been away to Australia for a year working on a contract in Canberra, and when I came back, the market for my skills had really mostly died.
With a wife and young son to support, John was keen to find work fast. One day, an advert in his local job centre caught his eye.
It was my wife that saw the advert, printed it off and brought it home to me. And my first reaction was, well, you know, I don't know anything about search engine optimisation. I don't know what it is or anything else.
Search engine optimisation. Maybe a bit of a mouthful, but trust me, it is a real job. One that involves helping companies get their name to appear high up in internet searches.
Companies are willing to pay to get their name at the top of a list. So those who have the technical capabilities of doing that can make money at doing this type of work.
For John, who'd had over 20 years' experience in IT, the job sounded perfect. And even better, the advert promised guaranteed work.
They would provide the clients for me, and you know, I was very keen on that.
John wasn't the only one to be drawn in. Ken Hollis, an experienced IT contractor from Swansea, had been struggling in an increasingly competitive jobs market.
I had been working as a self-employed web developer, but the work I had dried up.
Who can blame him for being attracted to what sounded like the perfect job?
Guaranteed income, they were going to find the clients. I would effectively just be doing the work.
The position was being offered by a company called Calmington Limited, and neither John nor Ken had any reason to suspect the advert was anything other than bona fide. After all, it wasn't like they'd seen it on some dodgy website or in the window of a newsagent.
The jobs were advertised in the Job Centre Plus and on the DirectGov website, so many of the complainants felt that it was more legitimate than being advertised by other means.
Both John and Ken contacted Calmington Limited and were invited to an interview with company director James Aiken. But the interview didn't take place at Calmington's offices. Instead, Aiken met both men at job centres, again, creating an air of authenticity. And on first impressions, James Aiken came across as a sound and trustworthy figure.
He was very presentable, very professional, very business-like in his approach.
He gave the air of somebody who has been in business and is looking to do business with business people.
And as Aiken explained how the job would work, the men continued to be impressed.
I would do the work to optimise the client's website, and Calmington would collect the money from the client, and the split would be 60-40 in my favour.
Aiken told both men he could guarantee them work because Calmington Limited had a large base of clients with websites that needed optimising. He also told them they could work from home and would be earning up to 30k per annum.
I was pretty convinced that this was the one for me. It had a technical aspect, it was going to make enough money, and I was pretty sure I could do it.
There was, however, just one teeny-weeny catch. To get the job, John and Ken would have to pay £2,500 to do an online training course provided by, guess who, Calmington Limited. But having been impressed by Aiken and lured in with the promise of guaranteed work, Ken and John were happy to sign up.
I saw it as being an investment in me and learning new skills, learning to do a job that would, that would go a long way towards providing and supporting my family.
But when John and Ken finished their course and were ready to start work, Calmington's promise of guaranteed employment was suddenly exposed as a lie.
I emailed him and said, look, I'm coming towards the end of the course now. How's it looking for setting me up with my first client? He emailed me back and said if I wanted to have a holiday before starting some proper work, now would be the time to do it, because then I was going to be very busy after that.
I'd finished the course essentially halfway through July, and I was supposed to then get my first client, and nothing turned up.
The men kept chasing Calmington, but company director James Aiken didn't have any jobs for them, only excuses.
Mr. Aiken sent me an email saying, unfortunately, we're experiencing high levels of foreign competition.
It'll be a few days, just be patient and don't worry.
Because we've had a staff member left, then we might not be able to deal with you.
Eventually, it just got to the point where I just had to look around and think, well, is this ever going to happen?
Both Ken and John spoke to trading standards, and they weren't the first to do so. Investigator John Morley was now dealing with a pile of similar complaints, and it was clear that this was a widespread operation.
The other complaints were spread throughout the country, from Scotland to Wales, the West Midlands, down to London. The victims were nationwide, really.
John and his team set about collecting witness statements from all the victims, and they also did some background research on Calmington Limited's director, James Aiken.
Our investigation led us to this property, Swainson Hall in Wynyard Village, which is Mr. Aiken's residence. At the time of the investigation, the house was on the housing markets for around about £2.25 million.
The house has since been sold to new owners, but at the time it seemed that Aiken's lavish lifestyle was being paid for in part by people like Ken and John, who'd signed up to Calmington's £2,500 training course. It was time for Trading Standards to get James Aiken in for a formal interview. At first, it seemed the businessman had an answer for everything.
Mr. Aiken gave the impression that he fully expected the business plan to be a success. He explained that that had not turned out to be the case, and he blamed the worldwide recession and other competition in this kind of area.
But John Morley didn't buy these excuses and began to take Aiken to task on the things Calmington Limited had promised. Things like the guarantee of work from Calmington's supposedly large client base.
Mr. Aiken admitted that there were very few, if any, companies already in the pipeline for their websites to be optimised.
Then there was the promise of £30,000 a year earnings.
We asked for proof as to how he could establish that kind of figure, and unfortunately he wasn't able to provide that.
And then, of course, there was Calmington's training course, which Aiken had promised was comprehensive.
Talking to the consumers who were involved in this case, they didn't feel as though they gained anything from the course that was offered, and certainly not £2,500 worth.
It seemed that the course that I'd done actually just wasn't up to the job. You could get better courses for a lot less money and almost certainly free from other places on the internet.
Trading Standards now had what they needed to take serious action against James Aiken.
The three areas that we decided there was sufficient evidence to produce a criminal case were the guaranteed earnings, the guaranteed client base, and the comprehensive training into search engine optimization. And all of those turned out to be false promises.
James Aiken pleaded guilty to 6 offences of providing misleading or false information under the Consumer Protection from Unfair Trading regulations. 3 of those offences were on behalf of Calmington Limited. Admitting guilt helped him avoid jail, and instead he was sentenced to 200 hours community service. He was also ordered to pay back £1,000 in compensation, which is the maximum he can now afford, having lost his fortune and his £2 million mansion, all of which is small comfort to John and Ken.
I was shattered by it, to be honest, because it was something that was going to support my family. It was going to be a great career, and there was nothing there. There was just nothing.
I'm really worried about starting up another business because I don't believe in myself anymore. I actually thought, right, this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be able to do this. I'm going to make money. And I'm back down to a low again now. And I just don't know where the future lies. I really don't.
If you're looking for work or are interested in retraining, here's what you need to know to avoid the conmen.
If they say they have a large client base, ask them for testimonials or evidence that that client base actually exists. Ensure that you make sure the qualifications that you're being offered are accredited by one of the recognised examination bodies. And finally, if you're asked to pay a fee, pay it on your credit card, because if it's more than £100, you will get protection from your credit card company as well.
For more information about employment scams or any of the scams featured in the series, go to bbc.co.uk/scammed. Before we go, there's just time to tell you about some of the latest scams out there. I've come to meet an expert from the Serious Organised Crime Agency to get the lowdown on what you should be looking out for. Today we're looking at a scam that arrives through your letterbox.
So many people are on the internet now, it's easy to ignore mail, old-fashioned mail, scam mail that comes through the door. What are you seeing right now?
Lottery fraud. You'll receive a letter telling you what this lottery is all about and how much you've won, and it's usually several £1,000,000 that you've won, and in there will be a registration letter. So you send off your money, £30, £20, something like that, and that's what they want. What you should be asking yourself is, did I go in for this lottery, and why should I be so lucky as to have won this money?
In short, if you didn't enter, you can't have won. So don't be persuaded to send off any fees. If you do, the only winner will be the con man.
Fraudsters will forever be coming up with new ways to get you to part with your cash. But armed with a little bit of knowledge, you can be one step ahead of them. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
£72 million richer, but the cracks are beginning to appear between the lottery winners. The syndicate continues tonight at 9 here on BBC One. We're out with the emergency services attending a school bus crash near Dorchester. It's Real Rescues next.